In this video, let's discuss the US-China trade talks. Okay, there is ongoing trade talks happening right now in London and between the US and the Chinese counterparts. And this is very important because we saw that from the time that President Trump imposed those tariffs on China, that was in February, early February to be very precise, market began to come down all the way to the downside. I will show you that on the price action. And I'll also show you the time you put a 90 days tariff pause, okay, and how the market responded. And I'm going to show you a video from Fox News talking about these trade talks happening today in London between the US and the Chinese counterpart. This is very important because when this trade deal come true in the future, I am very optimistic that the market is going to add about 15,000 points, okay, in the stock market. That means a very dramatic increase in the price of Bitcoin and many other crypto out there. And that is why this very topic is very, very important. So let's dive into the detail before I show you that very video of the White House press secretary talking about this very trade happening today in London. We discovered that immediately President Trump gets elected in November, market shoot all the way to the upside. You can see that on price action right here. This was around November right here, okay? And from this very point, market begin to move all the way to the upside. The market was very optimistic about that election because the market know President Trump is a pro-crypto president. Not only that, market stabilized a little bit, and at this very point, we see this very area when you begin to impose tariff on China, because this very trade war began with China, and that was around this very area on price action. And that was early February, and then we begin to see market begin to crash all the way to the downside. You can also check the stock market and see how the market reacted and see those datas, because they are very important. Market crashed back down all the way to this very point. And on April 2nd, where we have the Liberation Day for America, where he imposed tariff on almost all their trade partners. And that was very, very drastic for the market. We see that happen at this very point, okay, on price action, at this very point right here. Okay, this was the Liberation Day for America. That was on the 2nd of April. Market come all the way to the downside a little bit. Remember, China is the biggest issue here, and I want you to understand that the US consider China the #1 threat to their national security, and not only that, #1 threat in so many things, and that is why trade with China is very, very important. And as a matter of fact, China is their #1 trade partner when you set the EU aside when it comes to trade volume, and this is very important. And if you look at price action here, right at this very point, and we see on the 9th of April at this very area, where President Trump put a 90 days pause, okay, on those tariffs that was imposed on April 2nd, and said those partners that did not retaliate, and then market begin to recover. Of course, China gets a little relief from this very 90 days pause. And the market begin to move all the way to the upside from that very moment to where we are right now on price action. We know that their last trade talk happened in Geneva, which is very important. But last week, President Trump spoke with President Xi, and he said there was a deal. That means there was a trade deal that was struck. However, they need to go into the detail. And I believe that is what is going to happen in London today. And that is why we need to pay attention to this, because it have a greater impact on the market. So I am expecting that if that trade deal is struck between China and the United States, the market is going to do very, very well. And personally, I am expecting the market to do 15,000 points, okay, 15,000 points. And together with the big, beautiful bill, if you get that bill passed in the Senate, that is next month, July, then I'm expecting the market to do even more better now. Analysts and economists are saying the market is going to see a 20,000 points, okay, in stock ranging from the S&P 500 and some of those stock indices. Market is going to move all the way to the upside, especially if China, US get into a deal, and then we get the big, beautiful deal passed in the Senate. Now, these are things we need to pay attention to because these are the two most critical things that is actually hindering the altcoin season. And I believe strongly that the market need it. And then the third thing that we can also consider as one of the things hindering the altcoin season to come into play is the Fed interest rate cut. If Fed begin to cut interest rate, it's going to fuel the economy and money is going to flow into the economy as well, which means people are now borrowing at a lower interest. That's what it means. So I am not looking at something very different right here for market moving upward. We know on Wednesday, this week, that is 2 days from now, is the US CPI data. And that data is very important. Why? Because it's also a tool that Federal Reserve use to actually predict what they want to do about interest rates. Because the CPI data, among others like GDP and also employment rates, are the tools that the Federal Reserve use to decide on interest rate decision. Okay. Now, let me get you through that very video from the White House press secretary, and you take a look at it and what she said about the ongoing talks with the US and China in London today. Take a look.
Well, as the president has said himself, he has always had a very respectful relationship with President Xi of China, whom he spoke to directly last week, and that's why these trade talks will be happening in London tomorrow. And we want China and the United States to continue moving forward with the agreement that was struck in Geneva. The administration has been monitoring China's compliance with the deal, and we hope that this will move forward to have more comprehensive trade talks. Look, the United States and China have strategic interests in one another's markets, and the president is always going to put American workers and industries first, and that in the talks in Geneva really set the table for that. But we need China to comply with their side of the deal, and so that's what the trade team will be discussing tomorrow. And as always, they will provide a readout of that meeting like they always do in the effort of transparency.
So this is very important, guys, and why this is important is because the detail of what happened today in London is going to actually come to the public domain, and we're going to see it, and this is also going to tell if the talks about trade is moving forward or not. Because if that trade deal comes into play, that is, if they get a trade deal maybe in the near future, 2-3 months, nobody knows, but I am very optimistic in my opinion that it's going to definitely come true, but it's going to spice the market moving all the way to the upside, and that is very, very important. Another thing that is also very important is the big, beautiful bill. If that bill gets that the very vote and get passed, then the US economy is going to boom very well, which is going to spice the economy. Number 3 thing that we need for the altcoin season to actually be very great is for Fed to actually begin to cut interest rates. There should be interest rate cuts, because when interest rates cut comes into play, especially in the bull market, it actually make borrowing very easy, because you are now paying interest at a very lower rate instead of paying right now between 4.25 to 4.50 basic points. It should come a little bit to the downside to maybe 3.50 to 4 basic points. This is very important to fuel the market moving all the way to the upside. Now, on Wednesday is the CPI data, which I believe the market is waiting for. We can see the market move all the way to the upside before the CPI data, but I am looking at a down momentum in the market within this very area where the market is right now. And then after the CPI data, we should see market move very, very well aggressive to the upside. Now, on the overall, I am expecting that the market move all the way to the upside. Okay, on the long term, I am very optimistic of market moving all the way upward, and I am not expecting the market come into this very area again of $100K. I'm not expecting the market to come into this very zone. Okay, market can come back down a little bit and still move all the way to the upside, but right here for market to come below this very point of 100K, I am not expecting that anymore on price action. The possibility is there, market can come down, but in my opinion, I am not looking at something very different, and market, we should see the next pump in the market, especially before the end of this very month of June. I am very, very specific right now. Before the end of this very month of June, we should see aggressive pump in the market. Bitcoin should create another new all-time high. And this is my personal opinion. You can have something very contrary to this. So this is very important, guys. This trade talk between China and the US is very important. And let's look out for what happened today in London from that very trade discussion. Consider supporting this channel by leaving a like for this video, subscribe if you have not, and turn on the bell notification for more crypto videos like this one. Also check the channel for all that crypto content. Join our Telegram channel, the link in the description of this very video and also in the pinned comment. It is a free channel. Join right now. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.